but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. What is interesting about this scripture is that God is telling us not to conform to the world, but we live in the world, which doesn't seem to make sense. But what he's really saying to us, to the Apostle Paul, is that we live in a world that has two systems. It's very clear that there's good in the world and there's evil in the world. And what he is telling us is that we have to renew our minds in order to conform to his system and not the system of evil that persists. And sometimes that's a challenge because we face these competing forces, and every day of our lives we're trying to decide which direction to go in. To renew means to make new again over and over. Re means to do again. So basically what he is saying to us is that every day of your life, you have to remind yourself of who you are, who you are connected to, and how to make choices to conform to his will. One of the interesting things about life is that when we think about something like prayer, sometimes we may feel that, why should I pray every day? If I say to God what I want or what I desire, he knows it, and that's the end of the story. But the truth of the matter is, it's not for him, it's for us. Because we live in what you would call a hostile environment or an environment of competing forces. So we have to constantly renew our minds every day so that we can conform to his desires for us. As we traverse life, one of the most important principles to remember is the value and critical nature of the mind. Words or thoughts become words. Words become action. Actions become behavior. Behavior becomes lifestyle. And lifestyle becomes the culture. So it all begins in the mind. So it's so important for us to make sure that we renew our minds. We remind ourselves every day of who we are, what our assignment is, what our value is, what is good, what is evil, and we make the appropriate choices. One of the things that I made a determination to do many years ago, because everyone in this world faces the same challenges. We face the same choices. Every day we have an opportunity to do good or evil. But if you consistently, every day, take time to remind yourself of God's way, his purpose, and you renew your mind to that, then it translates into your behavior, it translates into your action. So I want to encourage you today to remember to renew your mind. Amen? Amen. Let's pray. Father God, we just thank you for another opportunity to gather in this place to conduct the business on behalf of the people of the Bahamas. Father, we thank you, as always, that each of us, no matter what side we represent, we are here for the people of the Bahamas. And we pray that we would all in this place do our jobs according to the assignment that you gave us. Lord, we thank you, as always, for civility, for friendly discussion, dialogue. And we thank you in advance that your will be done even as we follow your determinations and your plans. And we thank you for these things, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Our Father,
Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. Good morning, honorable members. Honorable members, in this COVID-19 environment, it is very important that we maintain the protocols that were established in this chamber. And so, members, I am asking all members to honor the seating arrangements that were established earlier, where on each bench we have a maximum of 4 persons on each bench. To keep the opposition caucus together, honorable member for Centerville, I would ask that you take a seat on the second bench, and the honorable members of the official opposition, if you can spread out to take the entire front bench so that we can have the proper physical distancing. Honorable member for Cat Island, can you go all the way? Or have, if you want to sit in the center, you could have another member take the other end. Honorable members, honorable member for Mango Peak, only 4 on each bench. Thank you so much, honorable members. Honorable members, when the business of this house suspended, we were at statements and communications by ministers on the order of business. But just before we proceed, honorable members, I wish to table a number of documents, reports from the Auditor General. The first report is an auditor, the Auditor General's Office audit examination of the accounts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bahamas Embassy, Brussels, and Belgium for the period February 2nd, 2019 to October 10th, 2019. Ordered that the document to lie on the table. The second report from the Office of the Auditor General is the audit examination of the accounts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bahamas Permanent Mission, Geneva, for the period 1st of June 2017 to the 30th of September 2019. Ordered that the document do lie on the table. And the third and final report from the Office of the Auditor General is an audit report of the Consulate General of the Bahamas, Miami, for the period the 1st of July 2016 to the 30th of June 2018. Ordered that the document to lie on the table. Continuing with the order of business, further statements and communications by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, given where we are, we'd like to just go back one step, Mr. Speaker, in the order of business to laying of documents by ministers. I would have spoken to the leader of opposition business, and I understand that the side officers would have no objection to us just going back to the laying of documents by ministers. So I'd like to move that the House just goes back to the laying of documents by ministers.
The official opposition, can you indicate? Thank you, honorable member. So we move back on the order of business to laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the process following emergency powers, COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, the emergency powers COVID-19 pandemic number 8, order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
No, I'm going to later. I'm going to do that.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Directions 2020, Bahamas Registered Stock number 9, 2023, 2025, 2027, 2030, 2040, and 2050.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Direction 2020, Bahamas Registered Stock number 10, 2023, 2025, 2027, 2030, 2040, and 2050.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Direction 2020, Bahamas Registered Stock number 4, 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Price Control General Amendment number 2, Regulations 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2020, Appointed Day Notice 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, at this time, I take the opportunity to lay on the table messages from the Senate. The first message is number 44 from the Honorable Senate. The message to the Honorable Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly from the Honorable President and Honorable members of the Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have passed the following bill and desire the consent of this Honorable Chamber, namely, a bill for an act to amend the Investment Fund Act. Also from the Senate, message number 45, the Senate acquaints the House of Assembly that they have passed the following bill, accompanying message number 43, dated the 18th of December 2019 from the Honorable House of Assembly, a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of a tax appeal commission and for matters connected therewith. Message number 46, the Honorable Senate acquaints the House of Assembly that they have passed the following bills, accompanying message number 46, dated the 24th of February 2020 from the Honorable House of Assembly. A bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on the revenue account during the fiscal year, commencing the 1st of July 2019 and ending the 30th of June 2020. And also a bill for an act for the appropriation of further sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for the capital development during the fiscal year commencing the 1st of July 2019 and ending the 30th of June 2020. Now, these are a lot of communications from the Senate. Message number 46. Message from the Senate number 46. Resolve that this House, A, approves the continuing of the proclamation until the 8th of April 2020. We have already passed that period. Message number 50. Resolve that this House approves the continuance of the proclamation made on the 17th day of March 2020 until the 30th day of May 2020. Message number 51, resolve that this House approves the continuance of the proclamation made on the 17th day of March 2020 until the 29th day of June 2020. Message number 52, the Honorable Senate acquaints the House that they have passed the following bills: a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money towards defraying the expenses of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for the period commencing July 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021. A bill for an act to amend the Tariff Act, a bill for an act to amend the Excise Act, a bill for an act to amend the Value Added Tax Act, a bill for an act to amend the Customs Management Act, a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act, and a bill for an act for the appropriation of sums of $515,524,579 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for the period ending the 30th of June 2021. Just two more and we finish. Message number 53 from the Senate. The Senate acquaints the House that the Senate has passed a bill for an act to repeal the Central Bank of the Bahamas Act, Chapter 351, a bill for an act to repeal the Banks and Trusts Companies Regulation Act, and a bill for an act to amend the Protection of Depositors Act. And the final message from the Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the House of Assembly that they have passed the following the following resolution, and I'll just read the first paragraph. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House approves the continuance of the proclamation made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of September 2020. Order that the messages from the Senate to lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the end of my communication, I would lay the final report of the Economic Review Committee. But I have one request also, Mr. Speaker. It would appear that the senators always receive such report at very late stage. If it's possible, as we here in Parliament receive a copy of the report, if a copy of the report can be sent to each respective senator at the same time.
Thank you, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the honorable member, Minister Darren Hanfield, who has been elected on the recommendation of both Canada and Mexico to the 50th, become the president of the 50th regular session of General Assembly of the Organization of American States. And I think that is a great achievement. So on behalf of the government of Bahamas, I would like to personally thank both Canada and Mexico for such recommendation. And I'm certain that Minister Hanfield would do an awesome job. Mr. Speaker, it's my privilege to table in the House of Assembly the summary report of the Economic Recovery Committee. The committee's remit was to make specific policy recommendations for the short and medium term, which could help with our ongoing economic recovery as we face the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression 100 years ago. The committee was asked to be bold and specific and to suggest recommendations that would help in the current economic crisis that we presently face today. We are in a particular moment in history. We must meet the challenges of the moment now. This is a matter of economic survival and of preparing for a better future. Our immediate objective is to stimulate the economy as much as possible. Just as my government is committed to beating COVID-19 and reclaiming our country's future, we will do everything in our power to restore jobs, livelihoods, and our economy. Mr. Speaker, I want to at this time thank the co-chairs and members of the committee for their dedicated and hard work in producing this report during one of the most difficult times in the history of the Bahamas. And I am sure that the House, as they have just done, will join me in thanking them for their services. The committee, Mr. Speaker, represented a cross-section of talent and viewpoints from the public and private sectors. The co-chairs of the committee are the Acting Financial Secretary, Marlon Johnson, and Kenneth Kerr, the CEO of Providence Advisors. I also thank those who served on the various subcommittees, as well as the general public and the many stakeholders who offered their enthusiasm, ideas, and specific recommendations. In addition to virtual town meetings, there were many written submissions from citizens, union officials, general contributors, business people, experts in various policy areas, and leaders of nonprofit organizations. The committee harnessed a number of ideas from the collective wisdom of the Bahamian people. On behalf of the nation, I heartily thank all of those seeking to offer light and hope during these very difficult times. As Bahamians, Mr. Speaker, as people of faith, we must always look to the rising sun in order to navigate the often wide and treacherous shores. It is often easy to say what is wrong. It is much more difficult to offer concrete suggestions and advice to address shared challenges. Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet had an initial briefing on the report. This past Sunday, we held another special Cabinet meeting to discuss various aspects of the report. We will hold further meetings to discuss and to deliberate on the various recommendations. In short order, I will note the unit or group that will be responsible for the oversight of the execution of the recommendations in the report that are accepted. It is vital, Mr. Speaker, that there is a designated entity to oversee the implementation process. And further, the Cabinet Secretary will arrange for a briefing on the report for all permanent secretaries. Today, I will inform the House of some of the policy recommendations, policy directions we will pursue. Let me emphasize that we will not accept all the recommendations of the report. In November, I will provide another update to the country on our deliberations on the report. In the interim, I invite the general public to consider what has been recommended. The summary report will be available at opm.gov.bs. I repeat, the summary report will be available at opm.gov.bs. Mr. Speaker, the committee has proposed a broad range of reforms and recommendations. They are intended to seed new industries and economic opportunities, or to expand existing ones, to make the Bahamas more attractive for domestic and international investment, and to make certain bureaucratic systems more efficient and less burdensome for citizens and businesses. Again, not all of the recommendations will be pursued. By example, the government has rejected the recommendation to remove the $500 customs duty exemption. However, there are many other policy changes and initiatives contained in the report that can be implemented and that will help to make our recovery and our country more resilient, more dynamic, more inclusive, and most of all, more sustainable. I want as many Bahamians as possible to see this document, because we must all be a part of the reform process. Government, labor, civil society, businesses, and citizens all have roles to play, Mr. Speaker. I ask the Bahamian people to make their views known to cabinet ministers and their elected representatives. Speaker, allow me to generally describe some of the economic realities facing our Bahamas as a result of the widespread global economic collapse resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic that we face today. Early in the pandemic, my government quickly recognized the devastating effects of the pandemic on our economy in general and on the tourism and hospitality sector in particular. And because tourism has mostly ground to a halt, our economy is in the worst state ever in our modern history. Indeed, much worse than the Great Recession of 2008. My government's policies had just returned the country to sustainable, consistent growth when the pandemic began. We had reduced our yearly deficit and we had improved public finances. Before the pandemic, we were experiencing record numbers of tourists on our shores. But sadly, we must prepare ourselves for the reality that these numbers will not return for some time. We had a record year in tourism in 2019, welcoming more than 7 million visitors, in spite of the tremendous damage caused by Hurricane Dorian in the northern Bahamas. The pandemic, Mr. Speaker, changed everything. Tourism is the engine of our entire economy. During the global first wave in the spring, international travel all but ceased. Our world-class hotels and cruise ports closed. 7 months later, the pandemic rages on. Global health experts previously predicted a bad winter in the Northern Hemisphere. People are more indoors during colder months. The virus spreads easier in closed environments and poor ventilation. And already in North America and Europe, COVID-19 cases are spiking. And sadly, the predictions of the health experts are proving correct. Our tourism industry, Mr. Speaker, will come back. Of that, I am certain. We will recover to pre-COVID levels. However, we must have realistic expectations as to when this will happen and when tourists from our major markets will begin traveling again by air and cruise ships. It will take time for us to return to vibrancy, Mr. Speaker. It will take time to get our arrival numbers back to where they were. It will take time to get our hotels open and filled with guests. Most of this return will heavily depend on how we as a people follow public health guidelines in order to reduce the prevalence of COVID-19 in our country, especially on New Providence. The pandemic, Mr. Speaker, is not close to ending. We will still be in it well into next year. Bahamians should not think of this pandemic as a short-term diversion in our lives that, when over, will quickly lead to the resumption of how we once lived. A different world will emerge on the other side of this crisis. Even international businesses that were stapled may be no more. Ways of doing things that were the norm before COVID-19 will give way to new modes in a new world. In the words of the Minister of Trade and Industry in Singapore, I quote, "The world has changed irrevocably," end quote. He said this past August that there will not be a recovery and a return to the familiarity of the old normal. He warned of the painful truth that we are not returning to a pre-COVID-19 world, that recovery would take time and not likely to be smooth. He also warned we can expect recurring waves of infection and disruption. Given that the Trade and Industry Minister said, with all the tremendous resources and expertise of a country like Singapore, we must all be honest, inside and outside of this chamber, of the many health, economic, and social challenges faced by a smaller, less developed country like our Bahamas. We must be honest about the nature of this disease, and that just about every country in the world is experiencing new waves of infection, requiring a variety of emergency measures and restrictions. While we can learn lessons from countries like New Zealand, Singapore, and others, we must be honest that our economy is not as developed, nor do we have the financial resources of such Commonwealth and other nations. Mr. Speaker, in the Bahamas, we have an economy overwhelmingly led by tourism, with financial services as a second sector. We are not as diversified as countries like New Zealand and Singapore, though they too have been very hard hit economically. The near shutdown of global travel due to the pandemic has shown most clearly how critical it is for the Bahamas to do the hard work to further diversify our economy within tourism and in other economic sectors. We must attract more investors, both domestically and internationally. The deep recession we face means that as a people, we must embrace different ideas and different industries. We must be willing to innovate within existing industries, to open up to new opportunities and markets, including in tourism. We must also be open to changing bureaucratic policies that guided us in the past. Put simply, Mr. Speaker, we must be open to reform and change. I set up the Economic Recovery Committee because I knew we needed a considered roadmap for reform in the short, medium, and long term. This time is like no other recent memory. This is the worst crisis in modern Bahamian history. Governments across the globe are supporting their populations like no other time since the Second World War. To emerge better and stronger in the post-COVID world, we must be willing to adapt to the changed environment. We cannot, Mr. Speaker, just sit back and wait for what used to be. Mr. Speaker, I wish now to advise the House of a number of policy directions for our economy, as well as update the House on 3 economic projects. Mr. Speaker, one of the main reasons I entered public life was the great economic opportunities for Bahamian entrepreneurs. My mission and vision, and that of my government, is the promotion of Bahamian enterprise and talent through opportunity in areas ranging from education and training to Bahamian ownership in every economic sector. Bahamians are a creative people. Many of us have multiple income streams. And in fact, those here in Parliament, as our salary is capped at $28,000 per annum, are forced to have multiple income streams. If given a chance, the Bahamian entrepreneur is as industrious and creative as any in the world. Access to funding has been a barrier to the dreams of budding business people for a very long time. That is why my government, Mr. Speaker, created the Small Business Development Center, extending millions in funding to those who want to start or expand a business. We will now significantly increase the funding to the center, embracing a key recommendation of the Economic Recovery Committee. My government will provide $250 million to Bahamian businesses over 5 years. That $1 million, million. Mr. Speaker, that is $50 million per year over the next 5 years. And this would clearly demonstrate our sincerity and our belief in the survival of the small business individuals within our Bahamas. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that this year alone, as a result of the pandemic, we are providing $55 million to small business development. A broad, sustained recovery requires Bahamian business people to have the funding required to create jobs. We need our Bahamian entrepreneurs to have money to create new businesses or to expand existing ones. With entrepreneurships, Mr. Speaker, comes risk. Not every idea we lend to will work, but some will. And the successes of these Bahamian entrepreneurs will be our shared success. Through those Bahamian successes, we will have new Bahamian businesses poised to be part of the economic success of our country in the 21st century. I will also ask the Ministry of Finance and other entities to help make Bahamian entrepreneurs even more aware of the many economic concessions available to Bahamians. Speaker, in the past few years, the world's view on marijuana has changed dramatically. Marijuana is one of the varieties of the cannabis plant. Uruguay and Canada are the two countries that have fully legalized marijuana. In numerous other jurisdictions, there has been decriminalization of the possession of small amounts of marijuana, while also legalizing cannabis plants for various medicinal and industrial purposes. In the United States, for example, marijuana is fully legal in 11 states. Medical marijuana is legal in more than 30. Hemp is legal at the federal level. The Bahamas National Commission on Marijuana recommended decriminalization of possession of small amounts of marijuana in its report in January of this year. The government will begin next year the expunging of records of those convicted for the possession of small amounts of marijuana. The commission recommended allowing medicinal marijuana use. The Economic Recovery Committee, ERC, has recommended the full legalization of marijuana for medicinal, religious, and recreational purposes, coupled with an appropriate but nimble regulatory regime that oversees the production and manufacturing, sale, consumption, and export of marijuana. There is this consistency in the recommendations of both the Marijuana Commission and the Economic Recovery Commission. Our cannabis laws, Mr. Speaker, are outdated. And as our society is changing, they too must change. The global legal cannabis market is already in the billions of dollars with significant projected growth in the years to come. We are reviewing the possible legalization of a hemp industry. We will report back to the nation following greater public consultation. A hemp industry, Mr. Speaker, would include variations of cannabis low in THC. Bahamian-owned or majority Bahamian-owned companies must and will lead to any new hemp industry in the Bahamas. Hemp is used in multiple products from clothing to building materials, and even in tea bags, such as some Lipton tea bags. There are potentially many opportunities for creative Bahamian business people to get involved in this new industry. Mr. Speaker, I note, where's Sandoval? This was Sandoval. And yeah. I note that legislation exists to provide the sovereign wealth funds. In keeping with the recommendation of the Economic Recovery Committee, we will review the legislation to determine what amendments might be required to allow the Bahamian people to take advantage of this and how a national sovereign wealth fund may be constituted. Mr. Speaker, consistent with the recommendations of the ERC, we will expedite the processing of the Bahamian and foreign direct investment currently before the government. We will restructure of decision-making on foreign direct investment applications. So the applications under a $10 million threshold would not be required to be submitted to the National Economic Council. Further, we will expand our national investment policy. Some members of the ERC committee are currently working on specific suggestions in this area, which will be presented to the government next month. We will review and expedite every serious job creation idea that will spur growth and economic activity. Speaker, the government has made capital works projects in train, has many capital works projects in train that will help to employ Bahamians. And I wish to note some of them. The demolition work of the building on the grounds of the old post office and Victoria Hotel will begin shortly. All approvals have been completed, and if it were not for the bad weather, that would have commenced. A modern 21st century central bank will be built on the site of the old Victoria Hotel. And Mr. Speaker, it is still our plan that a new court building would be built on the site of the old post office. I am pleased to report that a new government-operated school on Ragged Island is near completion. Various bridges and capital works are being completed on Andres. Central Andres. And as we speak, individuals from the Ministry of Works are traveling, or will be traveling, to Inagua to do geotechnical studies to ensure that there are no caves below cavities below ground level, so that we can commence the new school in Inagua as we had promised. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has sped up the digitization of our economy, with many services having moved online. We must go even further and faster to build a broader digital economy. And toward this end, we will promote the development of a national digital marketplace. The e-commerce platform can provide opportunity for small businesses and Bahamian entrepreneurs to buy and sell goods online across the Bahamas and provide opportunities for global sales. Mr. Speaker, just by waiting for a second, we are in the 21st century, and a very long time ago, when I was Minister of Health, I spoke about digital revolution, education, telemedicine, and the whole works, and we were well advanced and moving forward. But it disappoints me today that some of our major stores and the whole world is asking about curbside pickup. It disappoints me that some of our major stores still do not have online facilities where one can order such materials and equipment online and have delivered to their respective places or pick up. And I would hope that most, if not all, of our stores would move towards online purchases and online payment so that we can truly compete in the global market. Mr. Speaker, we have a wealth of talent among our Bahamian people, especially our artisans. As I would recall very well, that a Junkanoo doll was given to me as a gift. A doll of Bahamian material and Bahamian design. And that doll was made in Taiwan. Our product made in Taiwan and given to me as a gift. Mr. Speaker, that shows the talent that we have. Why should we be purchasing Junkanoo products from Taiwan? Taiwan should be purchasing such products from the experts and the professionals, us. I look forward to that, Mr. Speaker. We will further digitize the national investment process for domestic and international investors. We will also bring forward other recommendations to make it easier for citizens, businesses, and investors to access and to utilize government services online. Mr. Speaker, through the Small Business Development Center and the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, we will give direct financial support to farmers and fishers. There are a number of Bahamian and international investment projects throughout the Bahamas that will result in jobs for Bahamians at this time, including the construction industry. And I wish to update the House on just 3 investment projects that are still on track and that will help in our economic recovery, including post-COVID. Even as we look to short and medium-term measures, such as those recommended in the ERC report, we must also continue to prepare for the future so that our economy can eventually recover to pre-COVID levels and better. Mr. Speaker, here on New Providence, the government entered into a port operation and lease agreement with Nassau Cruise Port Limited for the redevelopment and operation of Prince George Wharf and related areas. The capital investment for the project is approximately $200 million. Environmental studies are complete. Work is ongoing. The demolition of the customs warehouse has taken place, and demolition of Festival Place is imminent. A new world-class cruise port will be built so that as the cruising industry recovers, the Bahamas remains a destination of cruise lines. Mr. Speaker, I want to divert here for a second. As we develop a new port facility, it is essential that our cabinet office be relocated temporarily. And a new cabinet office is being designed, which will remain on the same site, but it will be designed in such a way that we would still be able to maximize the open space at Rawson Square. And I know that many may have feelings, historical feelings about Cabinet Office and its location. But I want Churchill Building, but I want the Bahamian people to know that every time it rains, Cabinet Office, not the sector that Cabinet meeting is held, but the floor that my office and the staff are located, every time it rains, that facility is a pond. We had just repaired the roof last year, but in spite of that, Cabinet Office and building is still a pond. So there are serious challenges with that building, Mr. Speaker. Part of that building has been condemned. The Yardley building, the front portion has been condemned. Non-usage for over 20 years. Times are changing. So I want the Bahamian people to recognize that we do understand the history of Cabinet building. We understand the history of the Hadley building. But sometimes we must move on, but we can still utilize the same location. Do we continue to spend millions of dollars? That ain't what you want the people to hear. That ain't what you want the people to hear.
You better let us like
Oh my God, that's what you're listening to? You don't want to tell the people that. Do that and walk fast? Come on, cuz. I know you don't mean that. Anyhow, leader of opposition, don't take them on. It's always best to hear that than some of the other things that may come. So I'm sure I respect, and the Bahamian people respect. Yes. But Mr. Speaker, no. So I am placing the Bahamian public on warning that the Cabinet Office will be temporarily located. And we are creating a design so that all would be able to see. And this would be done by Bahamians so as to maximize and maintain our historical value. But we would not compromise Rawson Square. In fact, we will create more space for them to have future events or any events. On Grand Bahama, Mr. Speaker, the government executed heads of agreement with ITM and RCCL for the purchase of Grand Lucayan Hotel and related properties, as well as the redevelopment of the cruise port. The proposed project will include extensive renovations to the existing hotel and hotel property, and it is anticipated that the redesign will include a boutique hotel, timeshare villas, a commercial village, adventure parks, water parks, a convention center, even hosting facilities, retail spaces, dining and entertainment. ITM and RCCL, as a joint venture partnership with Listica, have indicated their intention to carry out their investment in the Grand Lucaya project and development of the cruise port. The developer has proposed an amendment phase approach to the development, which is presently under review by the government. And the developer, like all around the world, would have likewise been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But in spite of that, they have great confidence in the Bahamas and the future development of Grand Bahama and the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the construction of Goldwyn, Nassau's newest 156-unit condo hotel and residences on Goodman's Bay is now well underway. The parade and mezzanine levels of the building are now fully completed, and the second floor level well underway. I did a tour of such facility, Mr. Speaker, and I was so impressed with the facility and the view. And after experiencing the view for myself, anyhow, let me move on. Those driving by, Mr. Speaker, can see the structure taking shape, with roof expected by autumn of this year, and the completion and delivery on track by December 2021. Goldwyn represents an investment by developers of approximately $130 million. And at present, Goldwyn currently has a workforce of approximately 150 workers in construction, of which 50 are directly employed by the company and a further 100 by our primary contractor, Bahamas High-Rise Construction. Once the project moves into the finishing phases, Employment figures are expected to rise to 250 plus. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of other investment projects of which I will continue to report in the House and in other reports to the Bahamian people. The policy reforms we are embarking upon through the Economic Recovery Committee report are intended to help expand the Bahamian economy of old. I advise young Bahamians to be creative. I want to buy my Junkanoo doll from Bahamians, not Taiwanese. They should put together their business proposals. I advise young people and all Bahamians to not be caught up in the negative spirit of what is wrong. Let us all seek to work in a spirit of hope and unity to prepare to rebuild our nation. And those willing to do the hard work to build the new Bahamas will be the successors of the new Bahamas. We must all have a spirit of we should do, not they should do. It is the spirit of we that built our Bahamas. In this spirit, Mr. Speaker, we will recover stronger together. Mr. Speaker, I just want to mention just some of the great challenges we faced and which we've overcome and accomplished, in spite of those who initially may have felt that we could not do it and we would have been bashed left, right, and center. I want to congratulate and thank the Minister of Environment who has been successful in eradicating all dump fires. We have resolved the dump issue, and those residents who live in the vicinity of the dump can now live in peace and breathe fresh air and have a sense of security. We have experienced for well over 30 years load shedding and blackouts. Last 50 years, all Bahamians would remember last year what we went through during the summer with load sheddings. BPL, under the leadership of our Minister of Works and Chairman Donovan and leadership Whitney Hasty, have succeeded, Mr. Speaker, in eradicating load shedding. We've had no load shedding this summer, and in fact, many of us have not even recognized that we've gone through the summer period. No load shedding. Mr. Speaker, there were many complaints also about the cost of electricity. I am happy to announce that team and BPL again were successful in decreasing the electricity rate in the Bahamian people here in Nassau by 30%. Now, you will still hear individuals' bill is lower than previous, but still high. But why is that so? Because we're affected by the pandemic. Most of our kids and others are staying indoors, and indoors we're utilizing more air conditioning. My air conditioning in my home, my grandson has it on 24/7. So I know my bill has gone up, and others will be experiencing the same thing. So, and I spoke to a friend just yesterday, and they told me that for the first time in their history, their light bill, in spite of utilizing the air condition, is now $99. And they're wondering what BPL is doing. So I want to congratulate BPL and the minister. And Mr. Speaker, our Minister of Education is successful in preparing our students and our educational system to deal with this pandemic. I mentioned that stores, one cannot purchase or order or pay online, but yet, in a short length of time, the Minister of Education was able to accomplish online education for most of our students so that they can survive in this COVID era. And I also want to commend the Minister of Education, who was successful in launching his preschool program, and many of our Bahamians can now enter preschool program supported by the government of the Bahamas, all in preparing our young people for a new generation, a new Bahamas, and as they become older, they would be able to take advantage of the small development funding program offered by our very astute Minister of Finance. So, Mr. Speaker, we will overcome, we will conquer COVID. We will win this battle. And like the rest of the world, I've said before that we are now in World War III, the COVID battle, but we will all overcome. After which, we will revise and we will rebuild our economy. So I ask all Bahamians, utilizing the words of the leader of the opposition, stay tuned. And I am certain that he would have no problem of me utilizing his favorite words today. Stay tuned. Our economy will rebound. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up.
The economic recovery report at this time.
Order that the document be brought up.
Allow me just to put it in order, because it's, you understand.
Order that the document do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers.
No.
Oh.
In reference to the report being laid.
I just want to say to you, that's the first thing. Something that is not matter. I'm sorry, it provides the direction and vision of finance to the whole year. It's not matter. So that's the success. So that's the point.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, this is not the question.
Honorable
The
members,
Prime Minister laid what he laid.
honorable members.
Yeah, well, don't worry about that. You know how this goes. You know how it goes. Okay.
Honorable members. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador.
I'm not in your business. Mr. Speaker, I got the impression that this government who posited itself and clothed itself as being transparent and full and frank was laying on the table this morning the full report, not an executive summary report of the report. And I'm just wondering whether this government would be transparent, full and frank to the Bahamian people and would lay the full report as opposed to the executive report.
Allow me to say that this government has laid what has been provided to this government. Just as much information as you have is what I have. The backup information, as we receive that, yes, you may be entitled to that. I laid what I have. What you want me to do?
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members.
I laid.
Honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador. Honorable members, we are statements and communications. This is not the time to debate. The chair, honorable member for Cat Island. This is not the appropriate time. Honorable member for the chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Speaker, this is communications by ministers. We've allowed a little bit of latitude and brevity, Mr. Speaker. We'd like to move on with the Minister of Finance and the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister from East Grand Bahama.
Honorable members, just before we proceed, honorable members, we want to make certain that we proceed in accordance with the rules. Now, a document has been laid. Personally, I think it is premature to make assessments even before reading the document that has been laid. And so satisfy yourself with the document that has been laid. And if you read that and you were not satisfied with its contents, then when we sit again, the chair will welcome any response. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member for Cat Island, Exuma, Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador, resume your seat.
Ask yourself. Ask yourself. Ask yourself.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just before I give my communication, I think it is important. It is important to note that the report that the Prime Minister has laid is the summary of the recommendations that have been made. And the Prime Minister has indicated to the member for Cat Island that as the details are made available, and quite frankly, the government has to make some decisions. Those details will be provided. So this grandstanding that's happening is unnecessary and it's out of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, it is grandstanding. Mr. Speaker, moving forward. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I would like to.
Honorable members.
No, there's no point of order on a communication.
Honorable
There's no point of
member,
communication on
the
a
member is
on a
making a
communication. You know better.
communication.
You've been here long enough for this. You know better than this. You know better than this. Please, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there is no point of order on a communication. There's no communication.
Honorable member for East Grand Bahama. Honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Kings, and Salvador.
I'm informing
You want a point of order? What is your point of order?
Point of order is saying that
What is the breach? What is the rule is being breached?
the rule is being breached is that he is misleading what was said by the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister in his communication indicated that the report
Honorable member, let me
said the report
hear. Let me hear.
fastest communication.
Let me hear what he's saying.
Thank you, Mr. He's in his communication. The Prime Minister indicated that the cabinet had the report. He didn't say he had an executive summary report and that they would be going through it. They also said that they were not, he could signal now that they were not going to adopt everything was in the report. And what we're asking for, Mr. Speaker, is don't give us the summary. Give us what cabinet considered, what he said in his communication. That's what it's tied to.
Honorable
You
member.
have to be truthful in here. That's why I said you have to embrace truth, man.
Honorable members. Honorable members.
That's dancing.
Honorable member for Kalani. Just a moment, please. Honorable members. Honorable members.
You know better. You know better. You know better. You know better. You know better.
Honorable members. The honorable member for Kalani. You wish to make a statement?
Member
You
would
recognize the honorable member for
thank
Kalani.
you very much, Mr. Speaker. If the member would look in the report, the member would see that I had only extracted 2 or 3 items of the report. The report also have agriculture and fisheries in detail, technology, land administration, international financial services. It's all there. But you want to get in the weeds. Your member was in the weed more than I do. He has a complete. That's why you make a noise. You know what he gave you.
Honorable member for East Grand Bahama. Honorable member for East Grand Bahama. Just a moment. I hereby table the communication by the honorable member for Kalani. Order that the document do lie on the table. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these are indeed. Mr. Speaker, these are indeed strange times. And to remind the House that communications are not meant to be debated. Nor are they questioned. You can question afterwards, and you can raise it in a debate, but the communication is not debated. There's a period for that. But anyway, be that as it may, the Prime Minister was not confrontational. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my
Honorable member for Cat Island, Rum Kings, and Salvador, I agree with what he is communicating, and I also would add that the communication should not be provocative
correct.
and should not
That's correct.
provoke a debate.
Correct. And I don't think the Prime Minister's communication evoked any kind of debate. But Mr. Speaker, be that as it may, I also want to condemn, Mr. Speaker, just before I give my communication, I want to condemn the person or persons that are responsible for the abuse of the environment in Grand Bahama this morning, who would have dumped oil on the side of the road in East Grand Bahama. We don't know yet, Mr. Speaker, who was responsible, but I would like to update the Grand Bahamian community who have expressed concern this morning that the police have located the site of that dumping, and we will ensure that whoever is responsible for that will be brought before the court, because it is an egregious act and just unacceptable. The amount of oil that they deposited is just unimaginable. Just if somebody would do that, it's just unforgivable. And we will ensure that the law is taken into account with respect to that. Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I rise to present this Honorable House with documents related to the government's recent $250 million or special drawing rights, $184.2 million loan from the International Monetary Fund. The loan was obtained on the 3rd of June 2020 under the IMF Rapid Facility Instrument, a special facility available to assist member countries facing an urgent balance of payment needs. As honorable members would recall, the government approached the IMF for a loan to assist with its extraordinary financing requirements arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. The RFI loan is a 5-year facility with a grace period of 3.25 years. Repayments are to be made in equal quarterly installments of SDR, special drawing rights, $22.8 million, beginning in September 2023 through to June 2025. The key benefit of this loan facility, as in the case with borrowings from other multilateral institutions, is its concessional interest rate compared with typically higher market rates on commercial credit. Interest cost on the RFI funding is linked to the special drawing rights interest rate, which fluctuates daily, together with a margin. The government was also required to pay a 50 basis points service charge on the facility. At the time of the loan drawing, which was a single draw, the SDR rate was 0.053% and the margin was 100 basis points for a basic rate of charge of 1.053%. These rates are available daily on the IMF website. As of October 19th, 2020, the basic rate of charge was slightly higher at 1.103%, based on an increase in the SDR rate to 0.103%. Mr. Speaker, loan documentation for IMF facilities are different from commercial credit facilities. There is no traditional credit agreement. Instead, as we have borrowed against our SDR position in the IMF, the government is required to make scheduled repurchases of SDRs via the central bank in accordance with the debt service obligation under the facility. In this regard, I hereby table a copy of the promissory note executed by the government to acknowledge this liability to the IMF, together with the supplementary agreement between the central bank and the government that governs the RFI payment obligation. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the provision of these documents to this Honorable House is in keeping with the government's commitment to transparency in its management of the public finances, and it is an honor for me to uphold this principle. Mr. Speaker, I'm just going to read the letter, which is the agreement, Izuma and Ragged Island, and you will learn these things if you're ever privileged to be over there. I'm gonna lay it. I'm gonna lay it. Don't be sensitive, man. Don't be sensitive. Don't be sensitive. And the letter that we wrote to the IMF is as follows. And I think I'm going to read this, even though I'm going to lay it, because I think it's important that the Bahamian public understand the terms of this credit. And it's written to the managing director of the IMF. It says, since early March 2020, the government of the Bahamas has taken proactive steps to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these efforts, the number of Bahamians with confirmed infections have been rising, and so have the number of casualties. As of late May, we reported 97 cases of COVID-19 with 11 deaths. As part of our firm commitment to minimize the cost of the pandemic on the lives and livelihoods of the citizens of the Bahamas, we have closed air and sea borders to incoming passengers and enforced daily curfews on weekdays with full lockdowns during the weekend. The COVID-19 crisis comes on the heels of Hurricane Dorian, the strongest storm in the Bahamas' recent history, which resulted in a tragic loss of life and severe damage. As a result of the pandemic, we are now facing a sudden stop of tourism, an industry which is critical to our economy. Reconstruction of Hurricane Dorian related damages have also come to an abrupt halt. Our preliminary projections indicate that real GDP will contract by over 10% in 2020, while unemployment will exceed 20%. These developments have given rise to significant fiscal and balance of payment needs. To protect our citizens and the economy, our government has undertaken several measures. As part of the comprehensive pandemic response strategy, we appointed an economic recovery committee to advise the government on ways to jumpstart the economy following COVID-19 crisis, with a focus on job creation and stimulating small business development. And you would have heard the Prime Minister's report. The recently established National Food Committee will steer the collaboration among public institutions, the private sector, and civil society organizations to improve food distribution, especially to most vulnerable groups. As a result of the COVID-19 crisis and the current stop in tourism, we are experiencing an unprecedented decline in our revenues. At the same time, we are implementing temporary and targeted fiscal measures of about 4% of GDP to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on the economy. These include provisions for unemployment assistance, food and social support, tax deferrals, and business loans. In response to damages caused by Hurricane Dorian, we also introduced broad-based tax exemptions for the hurricane-affected islands and increased spending on social protection and infrastructure. We will adhere to best practices in procurement and contract awards related to the pandemic, ensuring transparency and ease of tracking of COVID-19 expenditures in the budget. We have recently reestablished the Audit Committee to strengthen implementation of recommendations by internal and external audits. The Auditor General is empowered to undertake regular audits of public procurement. We will publish procurement contracts of crisis mitigation spending, including beneficial ownership information of companies awarded procurement contracts, report quarterly on COVID-19 mitigation spending, and such spending will be audited by the Auditor General in accordance with international best practices within 9 months of the end of the fiscal year, and auditing results will be published on the government's website. We will also ask the Auditor General to quantify the revenue losses that are directly associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. The Central Bank of the Bahamas has maintained short-term interest rates at historically low levels and ensured ample liquidity in the foreign exchange market and throughout the banking system. It has encouraged banks and credit unions to consider loan moratoriums. This will be done without relaxing credit standards. We will provide guidance so banks' estimates of expected credit losses are robust and timely, and ask for regular loan portfolio reviews and risk assessments by banks to measure the pandemic's impact on fiscal, financial conditions, and asset quality. Against this backdrop, the government of the Bahamas requests emergency financing from the IMF in the equivalent of SDR $182.4 million, about US dollars 252 million, equivalent to a purchase of 100% of quota under the Rapid Financial Instrument to proactively respond to the severe balance of payment needs. Coupled with our own reserves and support by the Inter-American Development Bank and Caribbean Development Bank, this disbursement will help us fill the external gap in 2020 and the fiscal financing gap in fiscal year 2019-20 and fiscal year 2020-2021. We are determined to protect the Bahamas' hard-won reforms and advance our structural agenda after the COVID-19 crisis. We are committed to prudent policies through the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is designed to ensure the stability of our debt over the long term. To ensure compliance with the FRA over the medium term, we intend to embed sunset clauses in the new budget for temporary measures put in place in response to COVID-19 and Hurricane Dorian, and resume various measures planned before Hurricane Dorian, including the review and reform of investment incentives, reforms of tax administration, and the review and reform of SOEs, state-owned enterprises, to make them self-sustaining entities once the COVID-19 crisis abates. We will also develop detailed contingency plans to protect priority spending, including on social assistance, healthcare, and key infrastructure projects. In addition, we will take steps to increase revenue collection, contain the wage bill, and reduce transfers to SOEs at a measured pace over the coming years. We intend to finalize the public procurement law, which will modernize our procurement system and bring it in line with international best practices by end of June this year. We also plan to submit the Public Financial Management Bill and the Public Debt Management Bill to Parliament by end 2020. We will continue to develop our foreign exchange and debt markets and to update institutions, notably by approving the new central bank law, which among others limits lending to the government. We have made good progress in implementing several action items agreed with the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, to strengthen our AML CFT regime. As a result, in February 2020, the FATF made an initial determination that the Bahamas has largely completed its action plan to be confirmed through an on-site visit. The latter has been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We will work closely with FATF and continue taking the appropriate measures to ensure the Bahamas adheres to international best practice. The government of the Bahamas will maintain an open dialogue with the IMF. We are committed to ensuring continued macroeconomic stability and will avoid any measures or policies that will exacerbate balance of payment difficulties. We do not intend to impose new or intensify existing restrictions on the making of payments and transfers for current international transactions, trade restrictions for balance of payments purposes, or multiple currency practices, or to enter into bilateral payment agreements which are inconsistent with Article 8 of the Fund's Articles of Agreement. In line with the IMF standards policy, we commit to undergoing a safeguards assessment in connection with the RFI. We will provide IMF staff with the Central Bank of the Bahamas' most recently completed external audit report and authorize our external auditors to hold discussions with IMF staff. Given that financing from the IMF will be disbursed for budget support, a framework agreement will be established between the Central Bank of the Bahamas and the Ministry of Finance on the respective responsibilities for servicing financial obligations to the IMF. We authorize the IMF to publish this letter of intent and the staff report for the request for disbursement under the RFI. And this letter is signed by myself as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and John Rule as the Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas. That is the extent of it. The other document, Mr. Speaker, that I will lay is the promissory note between the IMF and us for the repayment of the drawing rights. And those are the documents related to the loan from the International Monetary Fund.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up.
So hopefully, Mr. Speaker, that will quell the conversation about that matter. As I understand, there was commentary just yesterday about this on a television or radio show, misleading the public, unfortunately.
Order that the documents do lay on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to give a communication on the government's recent $600 million bond offering that was executed last week. Mr. Speaker, as members would be aware, this Honourable House approved a resolution for the government to borrow $1.344 billion to finance the overall budget deficit for fiscal year 2020-2021, and also for the government to borrow to refinance maturing debt repayment obligations estimated at $696.6 million. In keeping with our continued commitment and obligation to fiscal responsibility and transparency, I rise to share with this Honourable House details of the government's borrowing activities to date for fiscal year 2020-2021. Mr. Speaker, before I present the specific debt transactions undertaken, I think it is important to frame the strategic considerations that guide the government's debt management function. The government's debt management strategy has been consistent with prudent and widely accepted guidelines for public debt management. In approaching the credit market, we sought to balance 5 primary variables: a desire to, 1, borrow as much as we could to satisfy the urgent budgetary requirements arising amid the ongoing pandemic; 2, borrow at a reasonable rate of interest; 3, achieve debt agreements that preserve the maximum flexibility to deal with the ongoing economic uncertainty; 4, maximize foreign currency borrowing while continuing to maintain a robust domestic borrowing mix; and 5, maximize to the extent possible access to credit facilities offered by international financial institutions. Put another way, we sought to ensure the government's financing needs and payment obligations were met in a timely manner at the lowest possible cost and at an acceptable level of risk. I remind this House that we spoke to our intended financing strategy during the recent budget exercise, and we continue to operate in line with that strategy. As I outlined the government's debt activities to date, you will see how these considerations have impacted our decision-making, and I plan to demonstrate that we are indeed making right decisions for the right time in respect to our debt management. Mr. Speaker, there are many noisemakers in the market who wish to muddy the waters. While they are often motivated by vested personal financial interests, the government of the Bahamas always places at the forefront the interests of the Bahamian people and the welfare of this nation. The Bahamian people can have confidence that the government manages its debt portfolio in a responsible manner that seeks to minimize the cost to the Bahamian people and minimize investment risk that may call into question the country's fiscal integrity. Mr. Speaker, during my presentation of the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget earlier this summer, I established that implementing the Resilient Bahamas Fiscal and Economic Plan would come at a necessary but unprecedented cost. As the public is aware, managing the public health impact of the ongoing pandemic has consequently meant higher levels of unemployment and an unusually high level of dependency on the support of the government for income replacement and basic social services. The pressure on our public health system has required special outlays for capacity building and infrastructure development. It therefore should be no surprise that the government has been engaging the credit markets to raise money to meet its financing requirements for the short, medium, and long term. Speaking to market conditions, Mr. Speaker, today, with several months of practical experience managing the economic challenge of COVID-19, we are in a better position to paint a picture for the Bahamian people of market conditions and their impact on the country's ability to borrow. Of late, there was tremendous volatility in the global markets, driven by the recent resurgence of COVID-19 cases globally and increasingly uncertainty around the US elections. The market perception of the Bahamas has been influenced by the implication of 2 major external shocks, Hurricane Dorian and now COVID-19, and their devastating impact on tourism, our major foreign exchange earner, and our largest direct and indirect employer. When we last assessed the international bond market in November 2017, the Bahamas had a credit rating of BBB+ from Standard & Poor's and an investment grade rating of Baa3 for Moody's. And we were on track to improve our macroeconomic outlook based upon this government's achievements with successfully reducing our annual fiscal deficit, while sustaining a robust agenda for real sector projects to support growth. While the precipitating exogenous shocks have been outside of our control, they have had adverse implications for our credit ratings. In April, S&P lowered our rating to BB, and then in June, Moody's downgraded us by 2 notches to Ba2. Unfortunately, these are the very indicators that impact investors' perception of the Bahamas when we engage in capital market transactions, and they price their perceived risk into the cost of credit. It is no different with individual borrowers who would attract a different interest rate based on how lenders perceive their risk and ability to pay. Mr. Speaker, the truth we face today may be inconvenient and unfortunate, but it is very real. There are market forces at play that reflect the reality of our challenging environment. Investors view the Bahamas through the lens of our tourism dependency, and the prolonged shutdown of the sector we are now facing has a material impact. We cannot and did not expect the market to respond to our financing needs on the basis of manufactured cordiality. The market reacts to risk. It looks at the economic environment and factors in our ability to pay our debt. This is why our fiscal sustainability goals are so important. We pay a price when we are downgraded. We pay a price when our fiscal balance is widely out of step with our fiscal target. Pursuing fiscal sustainability enables us to borrow at a lower rate and reduces the cost of borrowing in the long run. We have said from the start that when we emerge from this crisis, the government will return to the success of its fiscal consolidation plan, treating this juncture in our national story as an anomaly, not as a license to engage in fiscal indiscipline. One of the things that this administration has done since taking office through the Treasury Department is to develop monthly cash flow projections based on how it perceives the evolution of revenue performance and the timing of its outlays. A funding plan was devised to match the cash flow projection needs, and both projections have been updated on an ongoing basis to ensure that there are sufficient funds available to meet the government's budgetary requirements as and when needed. Coming into this new fiscal year, the government's revenue projections already incorporated assumptions for the adverse impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on domestic macroeconomic conditions. Mr. Speaker, in light of prevailing conditions and in keeping with the articulated debt management strategy to support the resilient Bahamas plan, the government has engaged in the following borrowing activities. Short-term financing. Early in the fiscal year, after an evaluation of available funding options, the government sourced $140 million in short-term advances from the central bank, of which $30 million has already been repaid. Commercial market loans. In August, the government executed a $300 million bridge facility obtained from several high-profile global investors, but only drew down $248 million of the loan. As structured, the facility carries a maturity of up to 365 days at an interest rate of LIBOR plus a spread of 5.5%. The government's intention was for this loan to assist with meeting immediate cash flow requirements and then be termed out into longer-term facilities via a capital market bond transaction. Borrowing from IFI, for international financial institutions. Consistent with our plan, the government has sought to maximize opportunities for financing from international financial institutions like the Caribbean Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and other bilateral creditors. Their more concessionary lending terms in lower interest rates and longer maturity timeframes reduce debt costs and risk relative to commercial credit, which carry higher interest costs and shorter maturity. In August, the government concluded a $200 million policy loan with the IDB at an interest rate of 2.11%, set to mature in 20 years. The loan was completely drawn on September 9, 2020. Again in September, the board of the Caribbean Development Bank approved a $40 million policy-based loan for the government. However, the government is currently in the process of completing the documentation requirements and expects to draw down this facility before the end of the month. This loan carries an interest rate of 4.1% and a maturity of 8 years. The favorable impact of loans from the IFIs and other concessional lenders on the government's debt portfolio is evidenced by their terms. At end June 2020, borrowings from the IFIs represent some 7.1% of the total debt, with an average interest rate of 1.8%, an average maturity of 11.2 years. However, there is a limit to the pool of funds available to loan to individual countries, as IFIs typically must respond to demands from across their member countries. It is important to note as well that loans from these international financial institutions are also typically associated with supporting policy reforms or capital investments, and therefore take a longer time to structure and close than traditional commercial loans. Capital market transactions. Mr. Speaker, one of the government's financing goals this year was to approach the international capital markets for the bulk of its foreign currency funding. It should be noted that it is customary to seek critical mass in terms of large financing requirements with a capital market transaction, given that the size of our financing requirements is not typically what commercial banks or IFIs are willing or are able to meet directly. Also, the government has always maintained the imperative of maintaining access to overseas credit markets, both now and in the future. While we have and continue to leverage domestic markets, there is a limit to what we can obtain, as the existing holders have limits on what they are willing and able to hold. In the prevailing environment, with minimal foreign exchange earnings, the pool of available investment funds is much thinner. Indeed, what we have been observing is that there is an increased demand for cash to meet the emerging need brought on by COVID-19. All factors being considered, in late August, Credit Suisse and RBC Capital Markets, LLC, were engaged to examine market conditions for the issuance of a possible index-sized bond, that is, at least $500 million, which would allow the government to access more efficient pricing in the international capital market. Momentum for the capital transaction was built with the help of a virtual investor roadshow conducted on October 5th and 6th, at which time our team, which comprised myself, the acting financial secretary, and the Director General of Tourism, met with over 45 global investors. The goal was to present investors with an update on economic and financial trends in the Bahamas, as well as the government's recent policy initiative for combating COVID-19 pandemic and plans for reopening of the tourism sector. The government also prepared an offering memorandum document to help position the Bahamas to be able to take advantage of capital of market opportunities as they presented themselves. I can assure the public, investors were properly appraised of the government's fiscal and economic outlook and plans. On Wednesday, October 7th, a benchmark issue of $600 million was opened to markets, and we were able to take advantage of a positive market window on October 8th to price a $600 million issue of bonds. At a weighted average life of 11 years, the bond was priced at an interest rate of 8.95%, payable semi-annually in arrears. Principal payments are to be made in 3 equal annual installments, commencing on October 15th, 2030, and a final maturity date of October 15th, 2032. The net proceeds of this $600 million issue will be used to finance the government's general budgetary requirements and to repay the $248 million bridge facility loan. And that's the loan I mentioned earlier from commercial institutions. Other planned financing. To the extent possible, the government has a preference to optimize opportunities for borrowing from domestic sources. However, we are mindful that the largest institutional investors, namely banks, pension funds, and insurance companies, all have internal prudential exposure limits at how much government debt they are willing to hold. However, the bulk of the government's remaining financing will be sourced from the domestic market. And I believe it's about $400 million that we still have to access should the need arise. Mr. Speaker, there has been lively public discourse about the $600 million bond offering. And I take this opportunity to clarify some misinformation in the public domain and to provide additional perspective to better understand why the government is making the right decision for the right time in managing the country's debt. Did the government seek alternatives that would deliver a lower interest rate? The sum borrowed on the capital market is less than half of our borrowing requirement. The $600 million bond represents approximately 45% of the $1.33 billion borrowing requirement for fiscal year 2020-2021. The substantial demand for financing requires the government to seek a mix of legitimate sources, and so far, we have already taken advantage of favorable commercial market loans and international financial institution loans, which I outlined earlier. IFIs will continue to be one of the most affordable sources. However, the level of financing that countries are able to access is limited. And as an aside, we are in discussions with one of the other IFIs with respect to some financing at another concessional rate. More to be talked about or said about that later. How can we justify paying over 8%? Generally, the pricing of bonds reflects how the market perceives the risk of the borrower. I want to say that again. Generally, the pricing of bonds reflects how the market perceives the risk of the borrower. It reflects current market reality. Given that the economy has not opened and our credit rating has taken a hit. Prior to COVID-19, we had Bahamian foreign currency bonds trading on the international exchange. Our most liquid bond had a maturity date of 2028. And at the time of issue, these bonds were priced at 6%. However, the impact of COVID-19 had these benchmark bonds trading at 8.25%, a factor dictated entirely by market conditions. That means that once we issue a bond, on the secondary market, these bonds are traded. And at the time of the issuance, these bonds, or the time of this COVID-19 environment, these bonds were trading up from 6% to 8.25%. The idea that this would be ignored by the investor community when pricing a new issue with an extended maturity date is pie in the sky thinking. Consistent with the government's commitment to fiscal probity, this administration will take the necessary steps to ensure that our economy gets back on track as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. It is important to note that the bonds have a clause that allows us to roll over the debt early if circumstances permit us to do so over the medium term. That's important to note. We have the option in the bond to refinance should market conditions permit for a more favorable rate. Consistent with prudent liability management principles, the government will take advantage of a stabilized macroeconomic environment with a view to restructuring its financial obligations if opportunities so present. We had several other options we considered, including a loan priced at 9%, which we outright rejected. There was also a 3-year offer for $600 million, which would mean having to come up with a $600 million principal repayment in year 3 or before. The short tenor would place substantial strain on the government in the medium term and not be consistent with proper liability management strategies. As is customary, the considerations that go into the choices we make, whether to borrow externally or internally, benefit from the input of our bankers, on input from the central bank, which provides market intelligence on the domestic liquidity conditions, as well as on investor appetite and macroeconomic conditions that would have implications for the external reserve. Mr. Speaker, given the pressure on credit markets caused by COVID-19 and to reduce its footprint in the market, the government was intent on exploring opportunities for greater liability management during 2020-2021. In this context, the government instead sought principal extensions on several bilateral long-term loan facilities with commercial banks and syndicated domestic facilities. On the $696.6 million in principal repayments originally scheduled for fiscal year 2020-2021, the government obtained principal extensions aggregating $96.8 million until 2021-2022. The government also secured a total of $19.6 million in principal deferrals for 6 months on 2 external facilities, utilizing explicit extension option clauses provided in the respective credit agreements. Therefore, principal extensions totaling $116.4 million, or 16.7% of the $696.6 million budgeted principal payments for fiscal year 2020-2021. The government also secured a 12-month extension on a $17 million short-term facility with a domestic bank, which was originally due July 29, 2020. Mr. Speaker, in summary, debt activity so far for this fiscal year included the following transactions. A net of US $552 million in foreign currency borrowings, comprising $200 million from the IDB and $352 million global investors. That is the $600 million bond less the $248 million repayment of the bridge facility. A net of $110 million in short-term advances from the central bank. Principal extensions amounting to $116.4 million, or 16.7% of the $696.6 million budgeted principal payments for fiscal year 2020-2021, and a 1-year principal extension of a $17 million short-term facility with a domestic bank. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I wish to make a final comment about transparency. What I'm doing here today is what we intend to continue doing and have incorporated into the draft public debt management bill that was released for a 45-day consultation period on October 5th. The proposed legislation will ensure that this type of report stays the practice for all future administrations, Once enacted, the PDM bill, Public Debt Management Bill, will mandate that the minister reports to Parliament on the performance of the debt management function, including the tabling in this Honourable House of the government's debt management strategy, to be followed by its publication. This document will, inter alia, ensure that the broad debt management objectives I mentioned earlier are achieved. It will guide the government's borrowing policy and debt management operations and document the cost and risks to the debt portfolio. Ministers of Finance will also be required to provide a report on debt management activities during the presentation of the annual budget, including a list of all outstanding borrowings and related debt service projections, an assessment of the costs and risks of the public debt, an outline of how the debt management strategy has been implemented during the year, and a report on related to guaranteed debt and other explicit contingent liabilities and on lending activities. These transparency requirements will further reinforce the government's commitment to fiscal discipline and to adhering to the principles of good governance in the conduct of its fiscal affairs. This is a solid commitment and one that we pledge and indeed owe to the Bahamian people. We must be responsible and accountable stewards of the public purse. What we are facing is unprecedented time, and we have no way of predicting accurately how long this global pandemic and the economic crisis will last. Therefore, the financing models we have prioritized are those that give us the most flexibility with the greatest cash flow while preserving the right to refinance at lower interest rates once we see our way clear of the current crisis. The government is constantly evaluating the cost and risk of alternative financing options in the context of prevailing market conditions. And today, we are confident that we are making the right decision at the right time in the best interest of the Bahamian people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Beach.
May it please the Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I rise to give an update on the start of the 2020-2021 school year. Progress, the educational instruction nationally, status of the Ministry of Education's new Educational Management Information System, commonly known as EMIS, inclusive of the Learning Management System, commonly known as the LMS, which is facilitated by One-on-One, a Jamaican-based company and a partner of PTC. 3 years ago, Ministry of Education embarked on the full digitization of the educational system of the Bahamas, an exercise that had been 20 years and more in the making, and that this ministry was intent on fully implementing. This digitization meant that each school campus and ministry's satellite office would become smart institutions with the provision of high-speed internet service, outfitting all premises with hardwire and Wi-Fi access, improving digital literacy in students by integrating the use of tablets and other devices in the learning experience of students, procuring instruments for all students from pre-primary to grade 3, and providing robust professional development activities for teachers in the areas of technology, integration in the curriculum implementation process, and installing both an EMIS and an LMS. The EMIS, Mr. Speaker, is a system which is responsible for collating information regarding student and teacher confidential records and the efficient management of the educational enterprise. As of Friday, October 16, 2020, school system had been populated with over 45,000 student records and over 3,800 staff user records, which had been issued with usernames and passwords to more than 43,000 students and 2,900 teachers. In today's world, the EMIS is vital. It is indispensable to the efficient management of the schools system, which makes it easier for school administrators, but also will efficiently inform decisions surrounding policies while advancing the ministry's level of reporting to local and international stakeholders. Moreover, the data in the EMIS is migrated onto the LMS to accommodate the teaching and learning process. The LMS, on the other hand, the learning management system, is the platform that facilitates the teaching and learning process. It's currently being used for virtual instruction primarily on the islands of New Providence, Abaco, and Eleuthera, and houses instructional and educational resources such as instructional kits, which are a collection of digital resources designed for every subject and grade level, including PowerPoint presentations, content, video, anchor charts, lesson notes, handouts, worksheets, among many other resources. Some of the kits have already been unloaded while others are being processed. And Mr. Speaker, the LMS permits educators, policymakers, and students and their parents to monitor student progress, which in turn gives a more accurate and timely assessment of a student's performance. The digitization of the Bahamian educational system is vital. It creates a platform where every student, every Bahamian student, has access to a quality education, a commitment that we have made to ourselves and to the world. For too many years, sir, thousands of our students in the outlying communities have suffered the deprivation of instructions in critical subjects such as maths, science, and others. Now with technology, those same students, through e-learning or distant learning, like their counterparts in the urban centers, would also benefit from a quality 21st century education. Thus, in September of 2019, the Ministry of Education launched the virtual school, the first of its kind in the Bahamas and the region, serving the needs, firstly, of some 600 students initially, growing to over 1,700 by March of this year. Those students particularly comprised of those in Meguana, Rum Key, Acklands, Crooked Island, Long Key, and Agua, some of the Exuma Keys, today receiving instructions through the virtual school. However, Mr. Speaker, the advent of this pandemic resulted in the ministry having to fast track its digitization efforts. Teams from BTC, Cable Bahamas, Alive, Walker's Industries, One-on-One, Global Sun, the Department of Technology and Transformation and Digitization, and the Ministry of Education have worked arduously over the last several months to provide a robust system to facilitate a quality education. As a result of the pandemic, the enrollment of the virtual school increased from 1,700 to over 48,000, virtually overnight. And this virtual school was indeed a godsend, for without it, the country's educational apparatus, the lives of tens of thousands of our students would have suffered near irrecoverable loss. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, Tuesday, October 13, 2020, nearly 47,000 public school students resumed their learning after a long pandemic and summer break. Most of the private schools had begun the new year weeks earlier. While attempting to access the ministry's virtual learning portal on that first day, many were unable to do so. The LMS system had previously, up to that point, been load tested and retested to meet the access demand of the 60,000 students that we are expected to access the system over a 60-minute time period. However, what in fact happened was that within a 10-minute period on Tuesday the 13th, between 8:39 a.m. and 8:49 a.m., some 22,000 users, educators, and students hit the access button, overloading the system, resulting in the system's defense mechanism being activated and therefore shutting down. Within hours, the system was restored. But by that time, most of the students and the teachers had moved to an alternative learning platform, such as Zoom or Moodle or Microsoft Teams, to continue their instructions. The ministry commends our teachers and students for this. By Tuesday evening on October 13th, the system was pretty much fully operational. The ministry decided to shut the system down, expand its capability through Tuesday evening and night so that it could meet the expected demand of the 60,000 users within whatever time period, 10 minutes or even less. This was done. And by Wednesday morning, October the 14th, the system, the LMS, was fully restored. The system today, Mr. Speaker, is fully operational. As I indicated at last week's press conference hosted by the Ministry of Education, there are still areas to be perfected. These primarily center around logistical issues, such as having the correct information, the users correctly accessing the system with the right username and password. I am happy to report, sir, that this has largely been correct. Though in many instances this is not done either because the users' names or passwords have changed, or are misspelled, or are incorrectly entered, resulting in the individuals being unable to access the system. Additionally, the ministry seeks to make access to all virtual modalities on a single platform, the LMS, so that all users, teachers, and students may, in fact, access all of their platforms in a seamless and efficient process. I am happy also to report, Mr. Speaker, that this now has been done. All students and teachers need only to access one system and may move seamlessly across that platform to access whatever platform learning modalities that they may choose. Mr. Speaker, it must be acknowledged that with the implementation of a new system to accommodate tens of thousands of individuals, growing pains are inevitable. Evidence from around the globe indicate, and even this region, that the installation of educational management information systems or learning management systems usually is a 2 to 3 year process. The Bahamas has done it within 4 months. The entire ministry team, led by Permanent Secretary Mrs. Umbrista, our Director Mr. Taylor, and Mrs. Charmaine Sinclair, with all of our district superintendents, principals, teachers, students, and our curriculum teams, deserve a tremendous appreciation for the tireless efforts they have made in getting us to this point. Please, Mr. Speaker, make no mistake. It has been a monumental task which has been accomplished, for which I stand very proud. I am confident that within a very short period of time, the capabilities of the learning management system will not only exceed expectations, but with faith and patience will pivot the Bahamian educational system, its delivery and instruction in this country onto levels once only imagined. I wish again to extend my gratitude to our teachers who continue to display an optimum level of resilience in the mission to educate our students. They are resilient, which means they have the courage to bounce back, to press on despite initial setbacks. And on this note, I wish to assure parents that as we work to resolve pending issues, no child will be left behind. Our schools comprise our administrators and teachers who continue to innovate so that the needs of each student are sufficiently met. And I cannot repeat adequately, sir, my thanks to the administrators and teachers who last week and are in some cases still implementing alternative modes of online instruction as the system challenges are being worked out. But they now can rest assured that those online instructional modes have now been seamlessly imported into the learning management system of the Ministry of Education. One-on-One and Amazon Web Services, the companies responsible for hosting the ministry's LMS, are continuing to work to address any and other occurring issues. Mr. Speaker, with a little more time and patience, I am confident that all will see the transformative value of the LMS. When used at its capacity, students, teachers, parents, and all others will reap bountiful benefit. This system not only allows for standardization and consistency of content across our islands, but it is truly capable of producing optimal results while making life easier for students and teachers especially. And as training of our teachers is paramount in the successful delivery of this virtual platform, training sessions are facilitated and were facilitated on September 10th and 11th and took place in 3 parts. And this training, sir, is ongoing. The EMIS and the LMS are new ventures, critical to the modernization of the educational system in the Bahamas. And education cannot progress under a regime of the manual administration of instruction, assessment, and record keeping. Today's students and educators demand and deserve a much more efficient and 21st century ready educational delivery system. I wish now, sir, to repeat in closing words spoken by the Honorable Member for Kalani, the Prime Minister, in a report to the nation on Monday, March 25th, 2019, when he stated, and I quote, "The government of the Bahamas is taking an aggressive stance in overhauling its educational system for future generations in order to ensure the country is equipped to face 21st century demands. Education is at the very core of our economic and social development. Our mission is to ensure that everyone has access to the educational opportunities they need and deserve in order to succeed in life and to become responsible citizens. We cannot and we will not advance as a country if we fail to make great strides in education and training at every level." End quote. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of the LMS and the EMIS is a continuation of that aggressive posture to reform and modernize the educational system of the Bahamas that the Prime Minister spoke about some 18 months ago. This is a national imperative. Indeed, it is a national emergency. E-learning, sir, is here to stay. There is no going back. The world of pre-COVID exists no more as far as education is concerned. And education must embrace it and further prepare our students and teachers for the 21st century realities that are upon us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the communication be brought up. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the honorable member would indulge me to ask just or express one concern, and perhaps he can answer that. I mean, it's very and as an appendage to his comprehensive communication. What I'm encountering in the Anglican community is that many people are unable to purchase, access these tablets or electronic devices. I suspect that many children are not in school at this moment. It's not scientific, but it's based on what I'm hearing and seeing as I move around. This is causing me tremendous distress, and I don't know what the solution is. A lot of people are out of work. Some are getting minimal assistance from the state, $100 or whatever it is a week. Many are getting no assistance. And so they don't have the luxury of hundreds of dollars for a tablet. And in many households, there are multiple children with this dilemma. And I'm just wondering, what is the solution in a situation like this? Because it's untenable for any prolonged period. And it's a crisis, frankly. And I'm wondering if the minister has given thought to this, and if he's able to assist in coming up with a solution of sorts. I was sitting here listening to the minister, and I'm thinking maybe a joint venture where there is partial funding. I don't know. I spoke with Alive. I've done all of that. The tablets are almost $200, $150 for one. If you have 3 children, that's $500. Then you have to have internet. I've spoken with the ministry. They talk about the way you can access internet, the libraries, etc. But with social distancing, I don't know. It's just from a practical reality. It's just a very complex, serious challenge. And I know in my constituency, I don't know what's happening in other constituencies, but I can attest in the most serious way that children are falling between the cracks. They're not in school. And I don't see, I'm seeking to contribute as other members of parliament have done, but it's like a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. And even to do that is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. To do 100, you're looking at maybe $10,000 or more. And if you need 1,000, if you need 2,000, you're talking about almost $250,000. So it's a very serious problem. And I don't know what the solution is, but I'm very worried about it. And I'm just wondering whether the minister can help give some insight as to what is going to happen to the children who fit that description.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are beyond the 1 o'clock hour. So before the Minister of Education addresses the issue for the member for Angleston, I would just move that be it resolved that the business of this House do continue beyond 1 p.m. today.
Is there a seconder? Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do extend beyond the 1 p.m. hour. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House will extend beyond the 1 p.m. hour. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
May it please the Honorable Speaker, thank you very much to the Honorable Member for Angleston. Mr. Speaker, it is the intention of the Ministry of Education to place a device, an instrument, a tablet in the hand of every public school student, every single one. I think that deserves a round of applause. So, Speaker, the delay simply has been, as you may know, that there's a worldwide shortage of instruments because everybody is working from home and students are working and so on and so forth. We are waiting the arrival right now of 5,000 devices. On Thursday, tomorrow morning, we will receive from a consortium of donors thousands of devices. They have made a significant contribution all of which will be distributed to students across the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. May I say, sir, that we have been beneficiaries, meaning the public system has been beneficiaries of donations from all over. There's donations for students. For instance, Mr. Speaker, in all of the Michael constituency, South Andros, I think, in Cat Island, all of those, they have already received devices. They have already received devices. They are also the donations are being coming in now for all of Abaco, all of Long Island. We are providing, as I spoke to the member for Zumas, we are providing for him. All he has to do is let us know what is required here in New Providence. As soon as those 5,000 come in, plus what we already had, we had ordered 5,800. Those are being distributed as soon as they come in. Mr. Speaker, I regret to have to inform you, Angleston is prominent. I tell you, Camp Road must stick together. Mr. Speaker, as amazingly as it is, and I'm sure that the honorable member would assist us in this, even though we have called for parents to come and collect the vouchers, as it would be probably with report cards, there are many who have, if not yet done so. So we have hundreds of uncollected vouchers for the devices. It is regrettable to have to state that here, so I beg parents to please come to the school where the vouchers for your child is being distributed and receive those vouchers and redeem them at any Alive store, and you will just receive those devices. and as I indicated, so as soon as the others come in, we will be distributing them across the system for all students. It is the intention of the Ministry of Education to provide a device, an instrument, and place it in the hand of every public school student this year.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further statements and communications by ministers.
Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to repeal and replace the Financial and Corporate Services Providers Act to modernize the law regulating non-bank financial and corporate services in the Bahamas and for connected purposes.
Is there a second? I'll pass the copy of that. Where's the copy? Order that the notice be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Financial and Corporate Service Providers Act to modernize the law regulating non-bank financial and corporate services in the Bahamas and for connected purposes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Financials and Corporate Services Providers Act to modernize the law regulating non-bank financial and corporate services in the Bahamas and for connected purposes.
Further, first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to regulate the issuance, sale, and trade of digital assets in or from within the Bahamas.
Seconder. David. Can I get a order? Order that the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to regulate the issuance, sale, and trade of digital assets in or from within the Bahamas. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to regulate the issuance, sale, and trade of digital assets in or from within the Bahamas.
Further, first reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following. A bill for an act to establish an independent body to manage the administration of the courts, to provide support services to and for judicial officers, and to provide for related matters.
Order that the bill be brought up.
Yeah.
I need a copy. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for first time. A bill for an act to establish an independent body to manage the administration of the courts, to provide support services to and for judicial officers, and to provide for related matters. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to establish an independent body to manage the administration of the courts, provide support services and services to and for judicial officers, and to provide for related matters.
Honorable member, at this time I'd also like to table the communication by the honorable member for South Beach. Order that the document to lie on the table. Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamacraw.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave to have introduced and have read for the first time a copy of the following. The Companies Amendment Bill 2020.
Second.
Order that the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. A bill for an act to amend the Companies Act. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Companies Act.
Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamacraw.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the International Business Companies Amendment Bill 2020.
Second.
Order that the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act to remove the mandatory requirement of a company seal and to make new provisions for the execution of contracts, deeds, and other instruments and for connected matters. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act to remove the mandatory requirement of a company seal and to make new provisions for the execution of contracts, deeds, and other instruments and for connected matters.
Further, first reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: the Property Execution of Deeds and Documents Bill 2020.
Order that the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. A bill for an act to make new provisions with respect to the manner of execution of deeds and other instruments and for connected matters. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to make new provisions with respect to the manner of execution of deeds and other instruments and for connected matters.
For the first reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: the Rules Against Perpetuities Abolition Amendment Bill 2020.
Order that the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Rule Against Perpetuities Abolition Act 2011 to clarify the law as it relates to the abolition of the rule against perpetuities and the disposition of interest in property, in trusts, and for connected matters. As many members are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Rule Against Perpetuities Abolition Act 2011 to clarify the law as it relates to the abolition of the rule against perpetuities and the disposition of interest in property, in trust, and for connected matters.
For the first reading of bills. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I rise and beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a copy of the following: the Foundations Amendment Bill 2020.
Order that the bill be brought up. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Foundations Act, Chapter 369A. As many members who are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Foundations Act, Chapter 369A.
For the first reading of bills, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable
first readings of bills.
Honorable members, before we proceed, the second reading, I just want to make an observation from the chair. Having had some training in observational analysis and intent, I note that during, first of all, the contribution of the member for Kalani, that the member for Kalani made a reference to the temporary relocation of the cabinet office based on the fact that it was discovered that the cabinet office has a leaky roof. Now, on the 30th of September, the speaker brought to the attention of this parliament that there was no running water in the speaker's office, no bathroom facility, molds, a leaking roof, and an office that was deemed a security risk by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. But I did not hear any initiative or plan set to correct that situation for the legislative branch of the government. Now, I am of the view that a man should not ever respect any other man above himself. And so, since God is not a respecter of person, I cannot sit here idly by as the presiding officer of this parliament and accept such a circumstance. So in the circumstances, this is the position of this speaker. On the 31st of October, 2020, the speaker will turn in the keys for the speaker's office because this speaker will not be utilizing that office in the condition that it is in after the 31st of October. So if the executive branch of the government determines that it is not in the best interest of this parliament and the speaker to give a proper facility for the speaker come the 31st of October, then the Speaker of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas will be without an office because I will not be attending to that office. In the circumstances, if it is the desire of the majority, the parliament can be prorogued and a vote of no confidence can be brought in this speaker and remove this speaker from this chair because this speaker believes in the separation of powers and that this parliament should be functioning as the first arm of government. I further notice that in the tabling of the bills today, that there is a bill for the Court Services Act that has been brought before this parliament. Since 2018, we have drafted a Parliamentary Services Act and submitted it to the executive branch of this government. I interpret this as a complete insult to the legislative branch of the government that the parliament is being asked to move to make the judiciary an independent arm of the government, and no effort has been made on behalf of the legislative branch to make the legislative branch an autonomous and independent branch of this government. And so, as far as I am concerned, I don't need to be a part of any institution that would be prepared to move in the breach of the Constitution. The Constitution calls specifically for the executive branch to be responsible to the legislative branch. called specifically for the executive branch to not encroach on the territories of the legislative or judicial branches of government. What we have seen over the years is a complete derogation from the mandate of the Constitution, not exclusive to this government. It has been happening now for decades. And I believe it is time for it to be challenged and for it to come to an end. I am prepared to do exactly that. This is a COVID moment, and in this time of this coronavirus, there are changes that have to be made. We have a new reality and a new normal. We cannot continue the way we have been continuing. And this presiding officer will not be a part of that circumstance. Now, the decision is up to the executive branch who have the majority. If you want to remove the speaker because of the speaker's position, prorogue the House and bring a vote of no confidence in the speaker because the speaker is not resigning. The speaker is going to fight for the right of the legislative branch independence and its autonomy. And let the record reflect that. Second reading on committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there is, you know, as a sort of Andres man, I'm never short on responses. Mr. Speaker, there are no second reading, but Mr. Speaker, I think it's instructive to say that I very vividly remember the Minister for Works speaking to the issues of your office, and that the Ministry of Works has that particular circumstance in hand. And I assume that the minister is not here, but I know that the government of the Bahamas, via its minister and its ministry, is eager to ensure that the speaker has the kind of surroundings that is conducive to the work of the speaker. Facilities that are conducive. Mr. Speaker, also, we would have looked at the parliamentary bill that was drafted, and the government is still looking at that parliamentary bill. And the Prime Minister would have spoken to some of those issues already in the House, and I'm sure we will come back to that later on in our legislative agenda at some point in time to speak to the issues of how the Parliament will proceed forward in the future. And so, but with that, Mr. Speaker, there are no further seconds.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
In what you just enunciated, I know that there's no attempt to remove the speaker, but I just wanted to speak to the court services bill. I served 2 terms as president of the bar. That bill has been languishing on the shelves. Miss Justice Dame Anita Allen, I think, was responsible for drafting that bill, and I remember a vivid contribution that was made by now Senior Justice of Appeal, John Isaac, speaking to the need for court services bill. So it has been laid for years, and I think the laying of that bill, and I, in terms of the judiciary, is not an intent to leapfrog over or circumvent, as you indicated, a situation that's been here for years. But I had to say, for a defenseless judiciary that is being argued, and you said that your situation is the situation, not yours, because it's not particular or personal view, but a situation for the judiciary that they've been lamenting for years. To the fact where the judiciary, one of the former chief justices, Justice Hall, lamented it. I remember him going on Jones and Co. and speaking to the conditions of the judiciary, and I'm quite certain that Angliston could remember, as a senior practitioner, know the lamentations that the judiciary has expressed over the years. Justice Barnett, the former Chief Justice who preceded him, and now this present Chief Justice has spoken to the need for that. And so I hear you, you're supported. But so I just wanted to speak for dispensers, judiciary, who's out there and who's been advocating in a way not like others can, to say that I know that the pushing for that, it was not intended to leapfrog this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Committee of the Whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Member statements, honorable members, we will restrict the member statements to 30 minutes. 30 minutes is the time allotted for the entire period. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And since there's only 3 members who want to join us in member statements, so that means I get 5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to first commend you for your strong gestures and overtures today in a matter that you feel very passionate about, but one that's been languishing for many years. I also want to commence by my brief comments by noting I want to thank the public health officials, especially those in my district of South Central and Mangrove Key Andros, the frontline workers in healthcare, as they continue to admonish those persons in my constituency and also the Bahamas by extension to wear their masks, social distance, and to continue to wash their hands and to be vigilant. Also, I would like to say thank you to the Honorable T. Desmond Bannister in his absence, who would have invited me to join him along with a member for North Andros and the Berry Islands just a few days ago, last week, Wednesday to be exact, in Central Andros to have a view at the bridge and also other developments in that community. The restorative work has been carried out. We were told this one by the member for Kalani, the most honorable member of Kalani, that the assessors should be on the ground and hopefully the bridge could be reopened as early as tomorrow so that persons can traverse from Coakley by Bowensang and Cargill Creek and go north, and those who are in the northern and central districts and also go all the way south in Fresh Creek. So we are grateful to the Honorable Minister in his absence, my friend, for that assistance. I'd like quickly also to note the fact that we want to extend to the former member of Parliament for the constituency of Central Mangrove Key and South Andros, R. Whitney Bastian, on the passing of his mother, and to his brother Larry and other members of the family, our condolences to the community of Mangrove Key. And also, as we note, the passing of Mr. Bastian's mother, also the former member of Parliament for North Andros and Mangrove Key, started back in 1972 on the passing of the late Clarence Bain, the Honorable Darrell Lee Roll. And also, we want to extend condolences to his family and the families of Central and North Andros, especially Low Sound, Bishop John T. Roll and others in that community, John Roll and others in that community, and also the member of Parliament for North Andros is also here. He also, by extension, is a part of that family. So the Roll family in particular, we are praying for them today, and hopefully we can have this matter that is very concerning to them, having a state-recognized service for one who given much to our community. It can be rectified through some resolution between the governing side and the Roll family. Quickly, Mr. Speaker, I would note quickly that as the 52-week job program continues to be of much concern, I've asked the good member for Garden Hills, who's a long-standing friend of mine, to consider my challenged community, and so that we could have definitive numbers offered to communities of South Central and Mangrove Key Andros. I have a very challenged community, and our people need opportunities. It's fateful to hear of the opportunities being offered in New Providence and mainly Grand Bahama, and our people can't get a definitive numbers, whether it'll be 5 more 52-week job programs in South Andros, 5 in Mangrove Key, or 5 in Central Andros. It is no more than fitting that the persons in these island communities especially be given an opportunity to be a part of these processes. Mr. Speaker, we still operate today without post office services on a consistent basis in the communities of my district, especially today in Fresh Creek. We understand that there are some investigations and auditing that is going on, but our people are being asked now to do basic banking services all the way in Nicholstown, Andros. Mr. Speaker, you're talking about a very long distance from Central Andros all the way to North Andros. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence in understanding this. Concomitant with this, we have the situation where services are not being offered on a consistent basis at the Bluff in South Andros, nor in Mangrove Key, where personnel is being shared. And so we ask the governing side and the minister under whose portfolio it falls, who is not a member of this honorable place, but a part of the upper chamber, to please look into this matter, postal services, especially in my district. Mr. Speaker, quickly as I wrap things up, the cost of food, Mr. Speaker, is a major concern in this country. Every day you go to the food stores, and if you can imagine that the food prices in your province are changing on a very consistent basis, you don't know what to expect the next day you go to the food store. You can imagine Family Islanders. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking that someone can look into this process, especially from the governing side, under whose purview it falls. That we can have someone someone who could be attached as the spokesperson, who can be the watchdog for the everyday Bahamian, because many people in this country today are challenged because of the price of food. We say the cost of food in this country is a major concern. Finally, on the small business that the Prime Minister spoke about, and the $250 million over some 5 years. I think that figure was given by the good member for Exuma some time ago, and it was good to hear this number being mentioned today. And 2017, I think it was. But I know the fact that
Honorable member, you're extending now. You're extending. Rafa, please.
No, but I want to tie it in, Mr. Speaker. Notice the member state. This is a member. No, I wouldn't start. This is not going to it, Mr. Speaker, but I'm going to come to it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm coming to it. I am saying to the member for Bamboo Town, who hails from Drake City, and I cried the other day together at the funeral for his aunt. So we go way back. I am saying to him, with the 55 million that the most honorable member for Kalani is proffering at the initial part of this program, that people, especially those small businesses in South Andros and Mango Fields, don't be forgotten. And don't tell my people in the farm they have to go online and they got to do all kind of fill in all these bunch of paper and all this thing. And other persons can walk in and almost get their check. But the speaker I know of which I speak, I am saying let the people in the farm islands, especially where the internet services is not consistent and very good, be given some level of understanding in this process. They have their own fishing lodges, their small resorts, they need assistance. The fishing industry in season is still going on. I am saying consider those in the farmland. Mr. Speaker, on that note, the civil society, please be minded. Too much kowtowing, and we don't like what's happening with civil society. And we're not hearing from civil society at all. It can't be when the PLP in power you get from civil society, when the FNM is in power. No, this is real talk, Mr. Speaker. Civil society. Member. Okay, Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. Mr. Speaker, as an honorable member, I withdraw. Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. Mr. Speaker, I withdraw.
Honorable member,
I withdraw. Look here, man. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I don't need this member to tell me withdraw. I respect you. Mr. Speaker, I thought I withdrew a long time ago, man. You don't have to remind me. I'm a senior man in here. Okay? I don't need you to tell me.
Honorable member for Mangrove Key.
Yes, sir.
I've extended you an extra 2 minutes. You are on the 7-minute mark now. Thank you very much, honorable member.
I have 2 more minutes.
No. Thank you. Thank you very much, honorable member.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, that's allowed. I don't want our people.
Further member statements.
I want our people to do their testing, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate your indulgence. Centerville, pretty much.
Honorable members.
Centerville, pretty much, Mr. Speaker, has similar concerns to South of Angleston in terms of tablets, as well as, still, of course, the Social Security issue is something that's very important to us. But today, Centerville wants to give a Centerville Thumbs Up Award today. And it is in recognition of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is October. And we usually in Centerville, we have Centerville in October, which was started by the former Prime Minister, Perry Christie. And usually we continued that, and usually we support as many businesses as we could. This year, however, due to the pandemic, we decided to embrace and direct our efforts to embracing the empowerment of women. And this being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, what we would have done was we got a pink dumpster for the Centerville constituency that we have been taking to each polling division. And it's 12 polling divisions. We're done with 7, and we will have this dumpster for the remainder of, for 1 more year. And it will go around the Centerville constituency over the next year. And that is in support of breast cancer. Today, Mr. Speaker, we want to give the thumbs up award to a very special lady. And when I saw this supplement in The Guardian on Monday, I couldn't help but to endorse her services over the many years. I want to give the Centerville Thumbs Up Award to Mrs. Andrea Sweeting. Mr. Speaker, Mrs. Sweeting is a devout Christian and a woman of God. She is an Anglican. She goes to the St. Agnes Anglican Church, and she's a 19-year cancer survivor. She's a mother and a grandmother of impeccable character. And this dumpster moving around the Centerville area will be in support of breast cancer awareness and in support of Mrs. Sweeting and the hard work she's done as president of the Sister Breast Cancer Support Group. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to encourage all women, those affected with breast cancer, and even men, that especially during this COVID time, to be more responsible with regards to your health and, of course, your body. Mr. Speaker, Mrs. Sweeting would have written something that I want to read, which will be very quick. She said, "I just want persons to know, regardless of what we're going through, our God is able, and we just have to trust him. If we do that, we will see the results," she said. And that was her words in the supplement. I just want to encourage her children, Teddy, Didi, and Philippe, for being there for her and with her. And she is just an extremely amazing woman. I just wanted to give her those honors, and in the hands are today at House Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me first say, Speaker, that I want to wish people of Tall Pines all safety during this COVID period, and we intend, Mr. Speaker, continuing our assistance. Last week, we delivered over 700 bags, 700 bags, school supplies throughout the constituency. I want to advise my constituents that we know that we didn't touch every house, so I want to share with them our office cell number. Our constituency office and community center is still not 100% open. So 824-6501, or you can contact us at Tall Pines Pride 242, our Facebook page. So we'll be reaching out to those persons whom we can assist. I hear the member for South Beach and Minister of Education speak about the distribution of tablets throughout the country. So I hope, notwithstanding the fact, Mr. Speaker, that there is no government. In fact, there are no schools in Tall Pines. Nonetheless, we have adopted Garvin Times, and we have done a lot of work with Anatole Rogers. And so we hope that our constituents, the young persons that attend those schools, to be able to benefit, as we intend also to give a lending hand, but as the member for Angliston and other persons said, it could be a very expensive endeavor. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that you raised some of the points that you raised. I spoke this Saturday to the Youth in Parliament group that's coming in. I think I don't know if it's gone already, but the Youth in Parliament, and we spoke about some of the issues, Parliament's independence and so forth. And I know we've been on the speaking tour in that regard. So I hope, Mr. Speaker, that we, as the member for Yamakwa has indicated, that the judiciary bill is being tabled. I hope that as a people, and I intend to speak to this during our next town hall meeting, this is why I'm raising it, to raise the awareness, because persons have been asking about it. So our next town hall meeting for Tall Pines, which will be in the next 2 weeks, we intend to address these issues. So I hope this Parliament would have the wisdom, Mr. Speaker. We have been debating bills in compendiums And I'm sure that the bill for the House shares some of the very same issues as the bill that's before us for the judiciary. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we engage in that discussion in our town hall meeting, I hope I'll be able to report to them that maybe we consider debating it as a compendium.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Today, I would like to send out my condolences to all of those families in my constituency who have lost loved ones in the last few weeks. Mr. Speaker, it's sad today that due to the fact that we've had several deaths throughout the constituency, that some of them were victims of the COVID. But be that as it may, I send up my condolences to you and your family. Mr. Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I'd like to send a thank you out to the Minister of Education. Minister, I want to thank you for making sure that South and Central were able to get some tablets. They're not completed yet. But I also want to recognize, Mr. Speaker, there are persons like Friends of the Library in Governor's Harbor that has donated tremendously to the need of tablets and iPads throughout the constituency. The One Eleuthera Foundation has contributed as well. And of course, well, last year I basically donated to every primary school tablets throughout my constituency last year, not knowing that this was going to take place. But Mr. Speaker, I also would like to say to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of Works, on behalf of the people, the good people of South and Central, we want to thank you for the work that's being done throughout the constituency. The docks repairs in Roxanne is on the way. And of course, the road works has begun in South and Central Eleuthera. So with that, I want to say thank you very much to the government and to the Prime Minister. And we will be looking forward to more to come. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Andros and the Berry Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to convey my condolences to the Roll family in LaSalle on the passing of a former member of Parliament for that constituency and the work that he has done. And my prayers continue for your family, and then know that I am here 100% with you, because he was also a friend of mine. It's always good to learn from both sides. Even though we may have opposed, we were very close as far as friends were concerned. I'd also like to convey my condolences to Pastor Bain, who's lost her husband, and also the Martin family in Mastic Point. Mitchell Martin, who was a very close friend of mine also, and his family who continue to support this administration or this party. I want to convey my condolences to them also. And finally, just learning about one of my constituents in the Berry Islands, Noel's family. I want to convey my condolences also to them on the passing of their loved one. And I know that my thoughts and prayers are with you through this difficult time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to give an update on the matter of the illegal dumping of oil in East Grand Bahama. Just to update residents that the location has been discovered. The police are on scene, as well as sanitation services, to try and identify where the source of that oil is or came from, and to have it cleaned up. Mr. Speaker, again, it is an egregious act, totally unnecessary, as the landfill has facility for the proper disposal of this waste. And it is certainly the position of this member of parliament to pursue that to a prosecution, because the level of and the amount of oil is just unconscionable that somebody would do that. So I just wanted to give that update to residents. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, with respect to the roads in East Grand Bahama from the missile base going east are in a state of disrepair. I want to assure the residents that the matter has been raised with the Ministry of Works, as well as I know that local government is also looking at the matter. And hopefully, we will have a solution and remediation of that very, very soon. I do want to express my regret that the roads have been allowed to fall into the state that they are. But hopefully we can have a quick resolution to that matter so that the travels become a bit more safe and comfortable. I also want to thank the Disaster Recovery Agency Authority for their work in Sweetings Key. We are currently erecting temporary homes on Sweetings Key, the first of which was erected on Sunday, and the rest should be over the next week, so that those persons who are still dislocated from the Key can return home. We understand that power should be on the way, and so hopefully that will get resolved quickly, as well as there are some work being done by one of the NGOs, hopefully, to give us a more reliable water supply. And so hopefully you'll have some positive results to report in respect to that very shortly. In respect to the matter that the member for South Andrews raised about the Small Business Development Center and access to financing from the Small Business Development Center and its partners, I want to assure the member, as well as all of the residents, all of the members of this honorable house and citizens throughout the country, that the benefits and resources that are available at the Small Business Development Center are available to all Bahamians throughout this country. We have gone to great lengths to make sure that the governing documents that established the Small Business Development Center speak to the universality of access, based not being discriminatory, based upon age, color, sex, political affiliation, religious affiliation, or island of origin. We want to encourage and to empower Bahamians throughout the length and breadth of this country, because every island, every individual has something to offer. And the collective of us really, I'm answering a particular question. The collective of us certainly has the answers to the revitalization and growth of this country. Mr. Speaker, the members who are commenting off you might not hear them, but they're questioning my comment. The reality is, this is a member statement. I'm talking about benefit, advising the public of the benefits that are available from the government. And so it is a member statement. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, be that as it may. The last thing I want to say, Mr. Speaker, in respect to the passing of former Cabinet Minister Darrell Rowe, I want to express condolences from my family, particularly on behalf of my mother, to his family. Many people would not know, but as a young boy, my father would have taught Darrell Rowe, and he never forgot that. In fact, in later life, he was actually able to return a favor in a way. And so there is some familiarity with that family, and we just want to express our regret, our condolences to his family. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, there being no, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Mayor, I did not extend condolences to Mr. Whitney Bastian, former member of Parliament, on the passing of his mother. I do recall when I spent some time at Legal Aid, Mr. Bastian approached myself and Angliston's brother, Mr. Hanna, and we did a series of legal aid clinics in Mangrove Key. And it was then that I met his dear and loving mother, who prepared lunch for us. And I would also, so on behalf of my family and I'd like to extend condolences to Mr. Whitney Bastian and his family, and also to the family of the late Mr. Darrell Rose. May God continue to bless them all during their time of bereavement. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, in keeping with the tradition of this house, can we all stand now in a moment of silence in respect of the passing of the Honorable Darrell Rose? Thank you, honorable members. Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings.
Speaker, I made a mistake and I'd like for you to indulge me for 10 seconds to thank the member for South Beach on the notices.
The chair recognizes the honorable member from Mango Field, South and Central Angeles.
Yes, I'd like to commend the member for South Beach for his efforts in trying to give tablets to all the students in the Family Island, and especially. And I would also like to say to him, it's a noble effort, and also like to thank especially the e-platform carriers, Alive, Damien Blackburn, Val, and Dwayne Davis, and also the staff at BTC, especially Tina Cooper, who had been in South Island just for some weeks to make sure the platform is up and running. What we take for granted generally in New Providence and Grand Bahama is very much a challenge in the Family Islands. And also, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also say thanks to the Minister Desmond Bannister for looking into our roadworks and getting those roadworks started in South Andros and Central Andros very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Against that backdrop,
Thank you very much, honorable member.
I'm saying all notices standing in the name of I said that, Mr. Speaker. All notices standing in the name of the opposition remains. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. President, but I must do this. Sorry, they distracted me with respect to the Small Business Development Center. But I just wanted to make sure that the residents in South Central Andros knew that there is a contact that they can reach for any inquiries with respect to small businesses. It's Ben Forbes, and the number is 812-3903. Ben Forbes, 812-3903. And as I take my seat, Mr. Speaker, I did neglect to extend condolences to the Lang family, Pelican Point, Walter Lang. I want to express my condolences to Donna and Don and Sandra and all the entire family on the loss of their father. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following resolution. Whereas pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General may make a proclamation of emergency declaring that a state of public emergency for the purposes of that article exists in the Bahamas. And whereas the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic of COVID-19 which seriously threatened the public health of the Bahamas. And whereas on the 17th day of March 2020, a proclamation of emergency was made by the Governor General pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, declaring that a state of public emergency existed in the Bahamas, which expired on 29th day of June 2020. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a proliferation of cases around the world and in the Bahamas, which mandated the continuance of a state of public emergency. And whereas pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General made another proclamation of emergency herein, the second proclamation, dated 29th day of June 2020, declaring that a state of public emergency exists in the Bahamas. And whereas pursuant to Article 29(4) of the Constitution, a proclamation ceases to be enforced at the expiration of a period of 14 days, beginning on the date on which it was made or at the expiration of such longer period as may be approved under Article 29(5) of the Constitution. And whereas Article 29(5) of the Constitution provides for the continuance in force of the proclamation, if at any time while the proclamation is enforced, a resolution is passed by each House of Parliament approving its continuance in force for a further period not exceeding 6 months, beginning on the date on which it would otherwise expire. The proclamation shall, if not sooner revoked, continue in force for that further period. Whereas, pursuant to Article 29(5) of the Constitution, the first resolution under the second proclamation hereinafter the first resolution was passed by each House of Parliament on the 6th day of July 2020, which approved the continuance in force of second proclamation until the 31st day of July 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(5) of the Constitution, a second resolution under the second proclamation here and after the second resolution was passed by each House of Parliament on the 22nd day of July 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the second proclamation until the 30th day of September 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(5) of the Constitution, a third resolution under the second proclamation here and after the third resolution was passed by each House of Parliament on the 16th day of September 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the second proclamation until the 31st day of October 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article Section 3 of the Emergency Powers Act, Chapter 34, here and after that, the Governor General made the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 2020 on the 29th of June 2020. And whereas Section 3(3) of the Act provides that emergency regulations may empower such authorities or persons as may be specified in the regulations to make orders and rules for any of the purposes for which such regulations are authorized by the Act to be made and may contain such incidental and supplementary provisions as appear to the Governor General to be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the weekend. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 2020 empower the competent authority to make such orders as are authorized by the Act to be made. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Order 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020 were made by the competent authority on the 30th day of June 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 5(2) of the Act, by the first resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 5(2) of the Act, by the second resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 5(2) of the Act, by the third resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic extension of Section 17(1) of the Local Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 21st day of August 2020. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 9th day of October 2020. And whereas, having regard to the continuing proliferation and confirmed cases in neighboring jurisdictions and an increase of active cases and deaths in the Bahamas, and whereas it continues to be necessary and expedient for securing the public safety, defense of Bahamas, the maintenance of public order, the suppression of mutiny, rebellion, and riot, and for maintaining supplies and services essential to the life and well-being of the community to continue in force. The second proclamation, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulation 20, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID Pandemic COVID-19 pandemic, extension of Section 17(1) of the Local Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020. And therefore be it resolved that this House, A, approve the continuance of the second proclamation made on the 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. B, affirms the continuance of effect of Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Regulations 2020 made on 29th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. C, affirms the continuance and effect of Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Number 8 Order 2020 made on 9th day of October 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. D, affirms the continuance and effect of Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Order 2020 made on the 30th day of June 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020. And E, affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic extension of Section 17(1) of the Local Government Act, Chapter 37, Order 2020, made on the 31st day of August 2020 until the 30th day of November 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Mango Keys, South and Central Andrews.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to quickly ask of the governing side, where does this put with the extension, the holding of local government elections in the Palm Islands member for Bamboodon? We will have some discussion about it. And maybe for further references to the good member for Kalani, who's the first among equals, that we can then maybe have these presentation next time maybe done in an executive order fashion so that the everyday person can understand it. That's my only suggestion on these the emergency orders that you would have presented today. For the everyday Bahamian, and everyone could also understand it in a very easy fashion for the everyday Bahamian. That's my suggestion. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the orders, the member for South and Central Andrews would have asked in regards to local government elections. The government did reinstitute in these emergency orders the fact that the local government elections is put or suspended until the emergency order ends. And I believe it is 60 days after the emergency orders end that the government of the Bahamas will engage in the local government elections. But Mr. Speaker, I renew all matters in the name of the government and move that this House, Mr. Speaker, will adjourn until 10 a.m. Monday, the 26th of October 2020. And it is our intent, Mr. Speaker, that come Monday, the 26th of October, we will debate the resolution to continue with the emergency powers. Monday coming.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. Monday, the 26th of December. Correction. The 26th of October 2020. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns until Monday, 10 a.m., the 26th of October, 2020, when we will engage in that jolly debate to extend the emergency orders. So I do now so move, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. Monday, the 26th of October. As many members are in favor, will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. Monday, the 26th of October, 2020.
All right.